Hello and welcome to the Superhero Podcast. I know I haven't been as frequent as I'd hoped to be, but we're back, baby, with some brand new content. So, how do we start off the comeback? Well, we're not going to be talking about Age of Ultron because, one, I've already done the review, and two, it'd be too easy. But I have a guest with me this episode, and I'm really happy about this one. His show, Comic Misconceptions, is a great tool for those who read or don't read comics, or just may have an interest from their idols on the TV or film. Point is, he's a very knowledgeable guy, and today, he's here helping me unravel a question. Please welcome Scott from Nerdsync Productions. Hey Scott, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm doing well. I'm a little worried that you introduced me as a knowledgeable guy, especially with this topic that we're going to be tackling. So.
No, I've watched a lot of your videos, and trust me, you are very knowledgeable on the subjects, and they are very informative videos that many people should enjoy watching. And it's good to see that people take an interest in your stuff.
Yeah, it's crazy to me. I didn't think that I would be able to talk about comic books the way that I do on the internet, and people would actually care and listen. And it's been fun.
Well, as you said, today we're talking about something that, well, we can't really escape from in comic books nowadays.
Right.
Event comics, they seem to be everywhere nowadays, like from multiple universes smashing into each other, or a reboot that some people consider a little overdue. Point is, there's not a place in comics that haven't been touched by these events. But the question that we kind of want to answer today is, why are some events that may look good on paper turn out so bad when they finally come around? And before people think we're picking on a sole company, we are not. DC. Scott, I'd like to ask you a question first. Mm-hmm. When something's commissioned to be made and it goes not the way it's intended to, or it turns out bad, I mean, who do we blame? I mean, especially in comics, do we blame the writer or the guys in charge?
That's a really good question. I think that instinctively I want to blame the people in charge for just letting it happen, but I don't really know.
I mean, I remember back over a year ago. I mean, I remember at New York Comic Con where Dan DiDio came out. Like, it was promotion for the new event that was coming out of Future's End. Mm-hmm. And the big hoo-ha all about it was that it's going to shake up the DC universe. It's going to introduce loads more people. Yeah. And the biggest thing that they had to offer was that everyone, like, fan favorite animated series hero Terry McGinnis, like, or Batman Beyond, was finally going to be categorically canonized within the DC universe. Mm-hmm. And everyone was like, yeah, that's amazing. And then 48 issues of really bizarre stuff in that book. I mean, you can try and say that, time travel or whatever. It's just the writing in that book sometimes was incredibly bad, but sometimes I don't think it's his fault. I mean, there were multiple writers on that book. I mean, Azzarello is one of them on there, which some have blamed for his writing, which I think is a little unfair because he is an accomplished writer and he has had his blips in the past. But it's the thing, when these companies start churning out these events over and over again, is it just like complacency that's in order?
Yeah, it's funny that you bring up Future's End, because I tried really hard to read that one, and then I just couldn't get into it. It didn't grab me, and so I actually have no idea what happens past like the first two issues of it.
Oh, you are so lucky. Okay, I'm not going to say everything that happens, because if someone actually wants to read it, first question, why? But two, enjoy yourself, and I won't spoil it too much. But the main thing that happens is that Brother Eye from the future, he's taken over the world, of course, and Bruce Wayne sends Terry McGinnis back in time to go and try and stop it. But of course, something goes wrong, and he goes back just before Eye takes over in 5 years back. And of course, this was meant to be a big deal concerning Convergence, which is happening right now. Mm-hmm. And so, all the way through this terrible series, we had misconstrued characters such as, Grifter, who was meant to be a big deal, and ends up turning out to be absolutely nothing in the end. We have really overpowered characters, which are basically used for nothing. 50 Sue. And at the end just boggles my mind as to how annoying it's one of those endings that kind of leaves it open and like saying, yes, we're going to tell this story in another book. You'll have to go and buy that book to go and find out what.
Oh gosh!
But the thing is, they haven't even released the book. It's just ended, and it's just ended on this cliffhanger, and there's nothing.
Well, that's not good. Did anything happen? Did it shake up the DC universe at all?
Well, it was meant to be. I mean, Earth 2 World's End, which again, another event that was happening in the comics.
Sure.
That was happening, and that was tied into it. Like the Earth 2, like Darkseid had come to Earth 2, and he was going to destroy it. Mm-hmm. And so somehow in that time, during Future's End, there was some like mention of a war, and everyone was like, "Oh my god, this is actually an interesting plot point." 18 issues in, it's like a real letdown. It's just like a simple, oh yeah, the Earth 2 people came over, and they were kind of followed by Darkseid, and we kind of beat him, and they were kind of refugees. Oh. There's your story. But the one kicker, which this is a spoiler if people really want to read the series, but seriously, you don't have to. The sole reason that people were kind of interested in this book of Terry McGinnis actually being an actual character for once, and not just like an animated star. Mm-hmm. He's killed off in the second to last issue of the book.
Aww.
And although they try and make his story really interesting, his story peaks at the beginning, carries on during the middle, kind of wobbles around towards the end because he has a romance with Plastique, which was really kind of odd. And then he dies, and then, lo and behold, Tim Drake takes on the mantle of Batman Beyond, goes into the future, and he thinks, oh my god, it's completely normal, and nothing's changed, the statues of the Justice League, it's all happy and flowers. No, turns out it was just it was a trap by Brother Eye, everything's not changed. And it ends with, basically, Tim Drake basically stood against the world, like saying, we'll save the world, and that's where it ends.
That's so disappointing.
Would you call that lazy writing or just bad decisions?
Both? I don't know. It just... I don't know. I feel like at a certain point, a lot of these big events, they try to say that they're going to change things up, and they say that they're going to try and introduce something that'll, like, shock the universe of the world, and then they just don't deliver, I think. So.
I mean, Marvel had 7 events last year, whether they be single characters or related, like single character related ones or universe spanning ones.
Yeah, at a certain point they stop becoming events and they start just becoming the norm of what it happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's obvious why it happens, and it's just one word, it's money, because they sell. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And of course, like, the comic industry has to, like, keep relevant, otherwise it fears of going back into the Dark Ages. But it's just the fact that they're not that special anymore. They're just there to be sold, and like, hey, here's the new event. Buy the paperback when it comes out.
Yeah. I mean, I personally, I don't read a whole lot of events. Like, I don't know why. I don't find them particularly interesting. I love reading the comics of, like, the single characters. Like, I love reading Aquaman. I love reading Batman. I love reading Spider-Man. But once you get to, like, big Marvel and DC events, I just don't feel the urge or the need to go out and actually read them because, I mean, like, so Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, and he had an event fairly recently called Spider-Verse, and I read that because that was, for the most part, even though it had a ton of characters in it, it was all still mainly focused around Spider-Man, and, that whole crew of Spider people, which was fine. Yeah. But then when you get something like, I can't remember. Was this last year, the Axis event or something?
This was mainly last year and just finished off this year. Year.
I really tried to read that, and I just couldn't do it. And I don't know. I tried to read I couldn't even get through the first issue, if I'm being honest. I read like half of it, and I'm like, I don't know what's happening right here, so I just gave it up.
I can label your problem right there. I mean, I read Uncanny Avengers from when it started, back from the beginning of Marvel Now, and even back then it was setting up the event. I mean, it was clear to see, and all the way through the book it was setting up little chess pieces so it could start, and then it'd be like, Axis, there we go. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you couldn't really get past the first issue because it was just so odd what was just happening.
Yeah.
And if you, I can understand, like, the golden word is continuity here, but the fact is that people haven't got time, or maybe the money, to actually go sit down and read, like 26 issues back, just to, like, sit down and read one issue and try and understand what's going on.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, with my schedule, I have a hard time keeping up with current comic books. I'm always like a month or two behind on everything because I just don't have time, and there's so much that I want to read. And so when I get to an event, I just feel like, as long as it doesn't feel like work, as long as reading this event doesn't feel like I'm putting in tons of work to understand it and read it, then I'll read it. But
here's a question: when you're reading Spider-Man, do you feel like you're having to like do it for work, or you can just enjoy it?
Spider-Man being my favorite character, I feel like I always enjoy it, and it never feels like work to me.
I mean, my favorite character, which a lot of people know, is Carol Danvers, which is she's always been my favorite hero. She's just a really fun character, and I've always liked her. And I can always sit down and read her stories and think, I can blast through all these, and it'll be a great day. Yeah. If I have the time, because I don't have a lot of time being a student of university and like having to do work and then read stuff when I can.
Yeah.
But then when when the events come along, which I kept up with Uncanny Avengers, so I was able to at least gauge what was going on in Axis, because there was a hell of a lot going on.
Yeah, there was.
But the thing is, when I see events that are just there and pointless, like Future's End, which just it had the single purpose of being a really kind of interesting event, like saying, here's Terry McGinnis's debut, go off and go do something really cool with it. Mm-hmm. And in the end, it just turned into a really lame sci-fi rom-com show, really.
Yeah.
It turned into the Big Bang Theory with the killer robots.
Yeah. I feel like, for me, it feels like when I'm reading something like Spider-Man or Aquaman, I can just dive in. I don't even want to know what's happening in the surrounding world. I just want to focus on them and their characters. And I feel like maybe that's another issue with events, is that when you have a big event and you have everybody in the entire universe colliding into one thing, it's like you don't get a lot of character development in that sense unless it's something like, I don't know, Civil War was an event that Marvel did, and they had a couple good main characters like Captain America, Iron Man, Spider-Man were.
Miss Marvel got her own as well. Like it was like it actually focused on her, and she got her own title to focus on those issues. Yeah,
which I think is a cool way to do that. Like as long as the event still feels like all the characters are there for a reason and they're going through their own thing, and it's not just like, let's just jam as many people as we can because we think it'll be cool, then it's I appreciate it more. I mean, when I'm reading something like Spider-Man or Aquaman, I'm doing it because I like the character. Yeah. So when you give me an event with those characters, I want to see and be able to read that they're there for a purpose, and that I can see like their side and where they're coming from, and that it's about them, I guess.
I mean, take for example, like, did you read like the Throne of Atlantis storyline, because that had Aquaman and like influence? Did you enjoy that series?
I actually really did. Yeah.
Did you? Like, I honestly, because I was starting to get into Aquaman, and I kind of enjoyed it. I kind of enjoyed it, and then I went back and read it, and I enjoyed it a bit more. But like, I'm getting back to your point of like when you wanted to focus on one character. And then if it doesn't really involve everyone else, it just feels kind of like a failed party. Really, you get, say for like one of the biggest events in DC's history, like say Infinite Crisis when that first happened, that was a reason why people like all these heroes came together. I mean, it was very rare that they ever did that. Mm-hmm. And now, I mean, there was just in the Justice League number 40 that just came out yesterday, which actually made me laugh. One of the characters basically says, yes, worlds are being destroyed, but it's happening far too frequent, because we had Infinite Crisis, we had Final Crisis, and we had Flashpoint, and it's happening too frequent. And they even poke fun at themselves because the fact that they reboot their stuff too often.
They really do.
But when I have an event like Spider-Verse, which for example, which was it it had its own book, it had Edge of Spider-Verse, it had Scarlet Spiders, Spider-Man 2099, and it had all these like separate books. For many readers, they just wanted to read the main book, and I can totally sympathize with that. Do they fail in trying to like keep on like broadening like there's loads of all of these characters, but if you really want to read the main book, this is the one. Is it right doing that?
I like. For me, I like the idea of having the main story as its own book, as long as the tie-ins and everything don't become something that you absolutely need to read to understand the full story, because then I feel like they're just trying to, get more people to pay for more comics. I say something like Forever Evil.
Yeah.
Had its own book and then it also had different tie-ins and everything like that. And I enjoyed some of the tie-ins, but some of them I just skipped over because I just couldn't get into it. But I feel like having the series, having like the event have its own book instead of trying to like put it into all these different categories of other things, of like, if you want to know what happens next in the story, pick up Spider-Man this, and then if you want to know what happens next, pick up Spider-Man 2099 issue this. It gets a little confusing at that point. So, I don't know. I feel like, for me, I like the idea of keeping the main story on its own, and then having tie-in stuff just kind of add to it, but not necessary.
Yeah, I remember reading Forever. I remember reading parts of Forever Evil because I didn't really have time at the time. Mm-hmm. And I remember reading Batgirl, like one of the issues of Batgirl, and one of the things that kind of miffed me off, because remember there was the scheduling conflict, and issue 6 came out, and then nothing happened for a while, and then issue 7 came out of the Forever Evil book.
Oh, yeah.
It was in one of the Batgirl issues that it actually revealed what actually happened at the very end of the book. Is it kind of pointless when we have those kind of... it's unfortunate that they had those scheduling conflicts and the printing things got messed up. But when you're openly revealing what actually happens in the end, does it make you want to go and buy it? For me, I was like, I'll read it, but I kind of feel annoyed that I know what's going to happen, sort of.
Yeah, I guess that's personal preference, because there was... pardon my comic misconceptions brain coming out right now, but there was a study done, I believe, about how people react to spoilers and that kind of stuff. So I can't quote the study, nor do I know where it's from, but it could just be something that I heard that somebody made up, and that's totally fine. I'm just going to quote it like it's fact right now.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the study said that people actually enjoy things more when they know what happens, even if consciously they're thinking to themselves, oh, I hate spoilers, I don't want people to spoil anything. In reality, you enjoy something more when you know how it's going to end, and when you know what to look for. And I guess I've done this sort of similar thing where I'll watch reviews, like very spoilerific reviews of TV shows and movies, and then I'll go back and watch them, and I'll be like, and then even though I know how it's going to end, I'll still think in my mind, no, that can't be it, right? No, that's not it. And then when it happens, I'm like, oh my gosh, it actually did happen like that. What? So, I guess it's personal preference, but for me, I would say, even though I'm the kind of person that doesn't want anything spoiled about any plot point, I still have a part of me that knows that I'm going to enjoy it probably even more if I do spoil anything. That's not to say I haven't seen Age of Ultron yet, so that's not to say don't spoil anything for Age of Ultron.
No, I will not. Even in my review, I say it right at the beginning. I say, look, no spoiler review. It's fine. Don't worry. You can watch this without having to worry.
Yeah. Well, because I make a living on the internet, I have to go into comment sections a lot. Yeah. So I already have a lot of people just blatantly spoiling Age of Ultron, and so I've had to step away from the comment section for a week or so until I watch the movie. Then I'll get back to it. But I know at least one major plot point that's going to happen in the movie, and I don't know. We'll see how I enjoy it.
Yeah. Were you disappointed to learn about it?
I don't think so, because I was a little sad that I think I was more disappointed that people would spoil it without even giving a spoiler warning. That they would just write out. They'd be like, "By the way, this happens in the movie," and then like later be like, "Oh yeah, spoiler alert." And I'm like, "That's the worst. Have some decency." But no, I don't think I was disappointed in learning the actual thing that happens. Which, by the way, could totally be wrong. Could just be people messing with me. But yeah, we'll see. I think when we saw the first Avengers trailer or something, or more information was coming out like way back in the day, I was like, I bet this is gonna happen. And then from what I'm getting from the comments, it actually is gonna happen. So I'm being super vague because I don't want to spoil it for anybody. Or if I'm wrong, then I don't know.
Well, if you're wrong, you can at least say to yourself, it doesn't matter then. It was like, someone...
But then I wonder if I'm going to be disappointed, like, because I was looking forward to it now. Like, oh, man, that would be cool. And then it doesn't happen. So, who knows?
Well, obviously we're not going to say it because, obviously, we're not going to be that kind of character who just goes, we're just going to openly talk about the movie. Because, one, you haven't seen it yet. Unfortunately, over in the UK, it's been out for over a week, and everyone's going, oh!
Yep.
So... like you said about like Forever Evil, how you started like reading the main issues and everything, like you focused on them and you just didn't really care about the others. Mm-hmm. I think I got that a lot from the other books as well. Like Arkham War was okay.
Yeah, I tried reading that and I couldn't really get into that. I read maybe like 3 or 4 or less. I don't know.
I mean, it was what it was. It was a celebration of Batman villains and what would happen if they took over the city, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
But then, like, the other books, like the Rogues book, and then you had other books, and it was just bizarre to try and, like, kind of comprehend everything that was going on, and the fact that you could actually get the complete story if you just read those 7 issues, and it wouldn't have done any difference. Yeah,
I mean, for me, it's really confusing, because the way that my brain is structured, I like organization and structure and everything like that, and these events make it really hard, because sometimes, like, I need to look up the exact reading order that I need to read everything in, and then sometimes they're a bit confusing where, like, you can't read 2 comics in a row because they're going to spoil each other. So it doesn't matter which one you read because, like, it doesn't matter which one you read first. It's going to spoil the other one in some capacity. And then, like, I don't know. It makes me frustrated that I can't, I need to look up the exact reading order, and then there's just no perfect way to read them, and it's really sad.
Well, I ask this then. Like, seeing as we don't care about... I mean, some of us don't really care about the other issues. And we know there's a sole reason why, because they do sell more if they have the title of, like, the event on them. But then the problem is, when do these comic companies know when to stop? I mean, going back to, like, the 80s and the 90s, Marvel had a good idea with the Clone Saga. It started off well enough, and then they said they were going to end it at this point, and it made perfect sense. It would have been a fine ending. Mm-hmm. Like it ends with Ben Reilly and Peter Parker going their separate ways, and then that's it.
Sure.
But then it kept on going and going and going until it just became a mess.
Yeah, that's a pretty confusing time for Spider-Man.
Oh, but your boy's not out of the wood yet.
Yeah.
Oh, I will take you all back to about nearly 10 years ago, to an event that a lot of people really don't want to remember, and neither does Peter Parker, because it was one more day.
I knew you were going to bring that up.
Well, it's unavoidable. When we're talking about single character events, I'd say that has got to be one of the worst.
Oh, absolutely, it was.
I mean, from insulting to comic readers to even like the dumbest plot points in the world. I mean, I'll just bring up one of my personal favourites, is that Peter goes all over the world talking to every kind of either magician or like mystic or like tech genius or like inventor, and none of them can help dying Aunt May.
Yep. He even talks to God at one point. Mm-hmm. Dressed as an old man, or disguised as an old man. Yeah.
Or you have Mephisto dressed as a little girl.
Yeah.
So and you're too stubborn. You're too this. You're too that. And I think when it gets to those kind of events, do you just like want to blot it out of your memory, just pretend that it never happened at all?
Yeah, I guess for me it's like I don't I want to focus on, because Spider-Man is my favorite, I want to focus on all the cool stuff, all the good stuff, all the interesting, and then just kind of forget all of that other stuff, because sweep it under the rug, because why would I bring it up? What? You're being ridiculous. Yeah, so I guess for me, it's like, I want to accept it as like, well, it happened, it's a thing that happened, let's try to embrace it, I guess, but at the same time, I'm like, do we have to embrace it? Can we just let's just show it out the door?
Well, I ask you this, because I asked you a question when we were talking before. How would you fix One More Day, then? How would you kind of correct it if you had the chance?
I just wouldn't make it happen, in all honesty. It doesn't make a whole bunch of sense to me. I understand that Peter wants to go around and find some way to save Aunt May, but I guess the better ending would just be he just accepts that he can't, and that's that, and then she dies, and then that's permanent. But I don't know. That's how I would have done it.
I mean, it's comics. I mean, no one stays dead forever. She'd come back in as a clone or something in the end.
Yeah, totally. It'll be like, oh no, this was just a Aunt May life model decoy that was shot that we made for no reason.
Yeah, just for a special occasion. We never told Peter. It just freak him out.
It was a really high-end one, though, so it had
it actually bled.
Organs. Yeah, weird. They have ones that do that. So,
but it's like it's that one that you want to blot out of your memory. Just like say, yeah, let's just accept that it kind of happened. Let's just move past it.
Yeah, I feel like there really shouldn't have been an event around that, or at least not a huge, not like that. I feel like they could have just like I said, I feel like I would have just let Aunt May die, and that would have been the end of it. But then they just wanted to continue making things really weird.
Yeah, true. I mean, it's not that was basically a reboot for Spider-Man anyway. Well, technically, I mean, Harry Osborn came back to life.
Yeah.
But, it's just one of those events. I mean, I'm going to take a personal approach. I mean, Miss Marvel's never really had, or Captain Marvel, or Carol Danvers, she's never had really a set event of her own. But then last year, she had, a single character-driven event that was built up through her arc. It crossed over on other books. But it was all done by the same writer, really well done, really well drawn, and it was a really compelling story because it went back to her origins. It went back to how she became who she is, and the consequences of having to deal with that. I mean, it ended on a really shocking note because of what she does to save everyone in the world. And for me, that was one of those events I was like, you know what, that's a really good event, and I'm happy to read that over and over again because I know that my hero is just going to be a good character.
Yeah.
But then when you look at something like One More Day, it's just disappointing for to say, oh yeah, Spider-Man's a fantastic character. He's never really done anything that bad. Apart from, tear around the city, acting like a madman, looking for someone to save his dying aunt where he should really just accept that people die.
Yeah.
Would it be better for, say, even for younger comic readers? I mean, they barely say it on TV nowadays. They barely say the word death. Would it be better for just younger fans to say, look, death happens. It's a natural way of life. Just let it go. Yeah,
that's what, I think there was one issue during that story arc where he's talking to the one above all, aka God, or whatever, and then he's like, look, I know that you want to save everybody, but you can't save everybody. You've saved, hundreds and hundreds of people. And they're really grateful, but you can't save 100% of the people 100% of the time. And I know it's sad, and I know you want a way out, but there is no way out. And then, of course, comics happen, and they find some sort of weird, convoluted way out. But, yeah.
Yeah. See, now you just brought that up. I just remembered another event that kind of happened. I know it's one that a friend of mine over at the Comic Podcast, Joel, wants to kind of forget as well.
Yeah.
It was Shadowland from Daredevil. Well, if you're not familiar with Shadowland, this was a point where Daredevil had basically had enough, and he became a killer. And he took over parts of New York. He killed Bullseye with the katana that he killed Elektra with, which was great symbolism. It was cool. It was really good. And then they basically retconned it as soon as it ended. They retconned it over and over again, like saying, oh no, it was a demon, he's going on a soul quest, and then a few issues later, back in New York with a lawyer firm, perfectly fine with Foggy and everything. I was like,
what?
Yep, that happens.
That's so dumb.
He goes from killing people with the hand to going back to a lawyer within the space of about a few weeks.
Mm-hmm. That's just... I mean, it reminds me of something that somebody said. I can't remember who.
Honestly, just say it. I don't mind.
It's this idea that when it comes to big events or, you know, things that change around characters, it's that you have to change just enough that people will care, but you have to almost immediately change it right back to the status quo before people get too upset.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of annoying that it happens that quickly, that you do something that changes the character in a really significant way, and then all of a sudden you're just like, nope, and well, everything's back to normal.
Well, a good example of that is the end of Axis. They had the capabilities of turning everyone back to normal. But then some didn't. Some didn't actually get turned back to normal. I mean, Sabretooth can get back to normal. Tony Stark didn't turn back to normal, and neither did Havoc. So Sabretooth's a good guy now. He's actually trying to turn his life around. I mean, at the end of the book, you have a really heartfelt letter to, he's writing to Wolverine, because obviously Wolverine's dead.
Yeah.
He's writing a letter saying, look, I'm going to try and live your life as best as you could, and I'm going to try and be better. And he's saying, look, I know I did horrible shit. I'm going to do better now. And that was a great thing. I mean, and then you go to Superior Iron Man. He's an asshole in that book. He really is terrible. But then he has these kind of redeeming moments in the book where you can see, former moments of him. And who knows, after Secret Wars, they may turn him back to normal. But to be honest, the way it's going, asshole Tony is much better. People like him a lot more than how he is represented before. It's just oh yeah, I'm Tony Stark, woohoo.
Yeah. And I guess it kind of, I don't know, I feel like it's all about, trying to do something that will, again, just try to change up a character even a little bit before they, I guess, change them back inevitably. I'm curious, what's the ratio between events that actually mattered and did something that changed the universe versus events that were just kind of there and yeah.
Well, comic aficionado coming forward right here. We have the original Secret Wars back in the 80s, where the first Black Spider-Man costume was brought forward.
Yes, that's a good
one. Now, that changed the universe a big time. That brought forth a whole new kind of thing.
Yeah.
And, again, like you said, you just don't see that nowadays, because it kind of gets retconned a few years later. It doesn't really stick.
Yeah, but I also like that one because it gave everyone, again, a good reason why that there was an event happening, why everyone was together in one place. It wasn't just because, hey, villain attacking, let's all, team up and do stuff. It was an actual reason behind it, and I thought that was really neat.
I mean, unless it was a team book like Fantastic Four or the X-Men or Avengers, none of these heroes would really be seen in the same comic together. And then Secret Wars happens. It was oh my god, everyone's together.
It was the first. Was it the first big company-wide crossover?
I think honestly it was. Yeah, that was the very first one they did. That was really huge on that level. And
then they just decided to repeat it over and over again until with all the other events. Let's get everyone together all the time. But
I mean, one that's just gone by, Original Sin, that can be. That was a really good event, which did involve everyone in the universe, because everyone had known the Watcher, everyone knew who he was, and so it made sense that everyone was kind of connected to it, and the story was fantastic. And Jason Aaron, Jason Aaron was the writer of it, who writes Thor at the moment, and lots of other books, and he sectioned out the book very well, and it never had to rely. I mean, yes, individual titles had their Original Sin tie-in. But the fact is that you didn't have to spend any money to kind of progress the story that way. It was just those heroes had those original sins that they had to live with, and you get to discover them. But with this book, you got the entire story, and you didn't have to worry about it at all, because regardless of what happened in it, it was going to stay the same for a good long while. I mean, hell, Watcher dies, Winter Soldier becomes like a guardian in the universe.
Yeah.
Nick Fury becomes sort of like an old man. Nick Fury becomes the new Watcher in a way.
Yeah.
And Thor can't pick up his hammer. That was the biggest thing that happened out of it.
Yeah, and that's still, and Original Sin, again, it created a lot of these it actually changed stuff. With Thor, obviously, another one would be, with Spider-Man, you have the introduction of Silk, which was his original sin, I guess. It wasn't really an original sin, but it's like, the spider that bit Peter Parker also bit another girl, and then she's been trapped away somewhere for a long time, and then now she has her own book. So, yeah,
Which
it
I
actually
say is very good. It is very good.
Definitely.
I think at Spider-Verse, those, like, the two new female books of Silk and Spider-Gwen, really good books. I mean, it's a shame that something like this had to come along to say, oh, wow, what if we thought like this?
Yeah, it was because basically there's supposed to be like just female Spider-Man, one from a different alternate reality, and then the other one's bitten by the same spider in our current reality, and then they just had to kind of explore like, well, let's create a big event, and I guess both of them were created by some sort of big event. One of them being Original Sin, and then Spider-Verse, another one they both introduced in. Yeah, that is kind of weird that they had to do that.
So when we look at like these events that spawn creations like Silk, like remember at the end of Original Sin, Thor dropped his hammer, and then the new Thor was announced that it was going to be it was a female Thor, and then it was announced that there was going to be a black Captain America, and then it was Falcon. It was like who's been his partner for years, so why not let him take over? Which was fine. I had no problem. In fact, I really like the new Thor book. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But then you have people complain because they're like, oh, I don't like this one. I don't like this one. It's the fact that, and then they have the gall kind of like saying, oh, do you read the comics? Oh, no, I just don't like the character. I just don't like how he's being. I'm like,
yeah, that's you're exactly right. It's just people that they get attached to the very specific way that
they get attached to these false ideologies of how these characters should look at like forever. Should Thor be a macho man who like can bask in the sunlight and see sun bounce off his chest? No. He should be a guy in the future who loses his arm and loses his eye and is a tortured old king who has horrible memories of the past. And then he had like a section where he lost his hammer, and and it's been a fantastic book so far, and I hope it continues to be.
Yeah, I mean, plus Thor was a frog once, so if you're gonna complain about like different ways that Thor should be, probably. I mean, for
example, in the new Secret Wars book that's coming out, you're gonna see every kind of Thor that's ever been or ever will be as the Battleworld's police force, pretty much. So you can revel in how many different Thors there are.
Yeah.
So that kind of brings me on to my sort of other point. Like, we've looked at Marvel, and then we look at DC's kind of track record of these like massive events that change everything.
Yeah.
I mean, take for example, Infinite Crisis. When that happened, like there were big repercussions of that. Like Supergirl died. That was a massive thing that happened.
Yeah.
And then we had hundreds of other deaths in there. Barry Allen died. And then that brought forth Wally West to be the Flash, and that was a massive thing. And then fast forward a few years later with Final Crisis. Oh, no, wait. We start with Amazon's attack, because this is how it all started. We start with Amazon's attack. That finishes, and it's basically a prelude to Countdown. Countdown happens, and then that's basically Countdown to Final Crisis. And then Final Crisis happens, and then that kind of ends triumphantly. You get Barry Allen returning. Barry Allen hadn't returned there. I'm getting confused. But the main talking point from that book was that Batman died.
Right.
Shock horror. And then just like cycle a year or a year and a half later. No, he's not dead. He's just trapped in time. We're going to look for him.
Yep.
Is it? We go back to this point. Is it? Do they intentionally do this just to annoy their fans, or do they just think it's fun to kind of say, "Oh no, Bruce Wayne's not dead. Here he is."
I feel like the problem is they can't think of anything more shocking than death. And so what they want to do is be like, this hero's gonna die. You know, obviously, Superman, death of Superman, huge thing that happened. You know, like you were talking about Batman dying and all these other characters just dying because that's like the big, shocking moment of these events. And then they just have to bring them back somehow because the death part is easy. The death part is like, we can just kill them. That's not a problem. The problem is bringing them back to life because we know we have to do that, but we have to explain what happened. And then that's when kind of these convoluted explanations come up, and they're just like, well, no, there were different time things, and he got trapped in a stream of the whatever, and then his body was all this, and then it was just... those sort of explanations are just the worst. But I feel like what they could do is try to explore a little bit more of like, don't focus on death to be your big shocking moment. Focus on something else entirely that is equally shocking, but won't be so hard to write yourself out of. Like, I guess, like, you know, trying to come up with some random example on the fly. What if, okay, so they had Green Lantern turn evil once.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's another one that's kind of shocking and doesn't have to do with a lot of, like, death. I mean, there was death, but, you know.
Quite a lot.
Yeah, but it wasn't like Green Lantern died and then they had to kind of find some way. But it was more like, you know, he turned evil, but then, of course, they went back and did that whole thing, and he's like, no, he was just possessed and all that stuff. So, but, again, I just feel like it's fine to... I guess I don't necessarily have a problem with going back on things, although I really wish they would do something that would stay permanent throughout the universe. But, like if Green Lantern was permanently evil, like, that would be kind of interesting. And then you would have another Green Lantern take his place and all that stuff. So, I don't know. I guess this is just a weird roundabout way of saying, like, they shouldn't focus on death to be, like, the big selling point. It should be try to focus on something else that is equally as shocking, but in a different type of way. So,
I mean, Rebirth is like you said, they write themselves into a corner, killing these characters off, and they're like, crap. Now we got to kind of bring them back to life. I mean, I'm going to be thoroughly interested to see when they bring back Wolverine and how they're going to bring him back, because his death was pretty definite. There was no coming back from that. So I'm interested to see how they actually do that in the end. But, like, take, for example, a death that happened in the DC universe. I don't know. Actually, not even a death. It was a character change. Like, we had, in the Green Lantern books, Al Jordan was outcasted, and now, in, like, future solicitations, he's seen as, like, this rebel warrior who's not even got a ring anymore. He's kind of like a prototype.
Yeah.
But the thing was, they introduced this new character of Jessica Cruz, or whatever her name was. I'm sorry. That she's not been that memorable so far, is the fact that they bring her forward to say, oh yeah, this could be the replacement. She's actually kind of got some character development in her. We could kind of push her forward. And then they just go, no, everyone wouldn't like her. Like, we'll get Hal Jordan back, and he'll be her mentor, and he'll eventually replace her.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, remember, Simon Baz was introduced into the DC universe, meant to be under huge fanfare, like saying, oh wow, this is going to be a great character. I mean, there were people making speeches about this character. Oh, it's a great step forward. It's going to be people wanting to do this and wanting to see that. Barely mentioned at all nowadays.
Yeah. He just exists in passing, almost.
Yeah. So I ask this question. Should these events focus on, like, introducing brand new people, or should they just focus on telling a complete story on its own?
I think from what I think they should do is not focus on, don't have, like, a goal in mind to, like, well, we need to do something shocking, we need to introduce a new character, we need to kill off somebody. I think the goal should just be tell a good story. Tell a story that stands on its own, that, you know, maybe there doesn't need to be a shocking moment. Maybe you can just tell something that's really, really interesting and grabs people's attention, and it's not something that, oh, everyone has to watch this book because watch this book. To read this book. Just stare at the book. It'll tell you everything you need to know.
Books are visual nowadays.
Yep. Everyone needs to read this book because, you know, Batman's gonna die. Ooh. we're gonna make lots of money now. No, I feel like just tell a good story. And I guess one of the problems I have with big events and everything is just the fact that they always have to be these, like, they seemingly always need to be these universe expanding, reality expanding things that get a little complicated. And I think you can tell a really good story without needing to do that. Like, if you can just get everyone, like, say you want to bring all the characters together, fine. Make sure they have a reason to be there. Make sure that their motivation makes sense. And have some sort of antagonist that's not just like, someone crashing worlds together and like there's always stuff about multiple worlds and alternate realities, and I'm just like, just do something a little different, keep it a little bit more grounded. Like, I like Civil War because it's fairly grounded in a lot of in a lot of ways where
it's not really. You can't really set it. You can't really say, "Oh, it's a piece of its time," because you can kind of read it any day now and you say, "Oh, it kind of is relevant nowadays."
Yeah, and it brings up a lot of interesting points. You can kind of see, if you like dive into the reality of what both sides want, you can kind of pick apart, like, this is a really good point, this is also a really good point. And I like it because it's not, it had some, like, shocking moments, like Spider-Man revealing his identity and all that stuff. But I feel like, for the most part, the reason why I liked it is because you could kind of see that each side was like, I can kind of see what they're getting at. And it was kind of interesting to me. And so, yeah, just make sure you're telling a good story, first and foremost.
Would you say, like, the kind of the best, like, say, Elseworld stories, would they be like the best kind of things, like Kingdom Come?
Yeah, sure. I think, because then those aren't just, they don't have to, if they do something crazy, then they don't have to retcon it away later. They can just be like, oh no, it's in its own separate thing. Yeah.
So kind of like the closing point that we're going for is we're coming to, like I said, hint at the very beginning of the show. We have at the moment two massive events going on in both companies that are going to shape how they go on in the next couple of years to go. We have Convergence in DC, which is bringing together all the universes, like all aspects of certain universes from around DC's colourful history, and then basically putting them on one world, and Telos, which is a combination of multiple different Brainiacs, especially the animated series one, which I got a little chuckle out of that one. And it basically says, look, only one world can survive, fight to survive, the winner is the one that's left standing. Basically, there's your story. Every book gets to kind of saying, oh, look, say, for example, Superboy has to go and fight Kingdom Come Superman. The Flash of Kingdom Come has to go and fight Wally West or Red Robin. It's kind of like that, and that's a simple enough story. It's not having to rely on, like, outer titles to, like, kind of focus on, like, tell other parts of the story. I mean, it does, but it's like, it says, look, Convergence is here. You're following this story. If you read it all to the end, this is what's going to happen. Nothing else is going to happen in these other books. It's going to say, oh my god, it's big deal. And then we have Secret Wars, which is kind of like a celebration of Marvel's first big event, which shaped their Marvel Universe again. But this one is going to be something different. It's going to combine both aspects of the Ultimate Universe and the 616 into one big battle world. And unfortunately, we are going to get the same problem. We are going to have a set of like 8 to 9 books of the main story, and then we have multiple different tie-in books that are going to affect the story as well. I mean, we're getting like I'm just going to try and name as many of them as I can. We're going to have Captain Marvel and the Carol Corps, which I will read because, you know, I like that book.
Sure.
We have Spider-Verse, we have Mrs. Deadpool, we have Weird World, we have Age of Apocalypse, we have Star-Lord and Age of Apocalypse Kitty Pryde. We're going to have even more sections of Thor's. We're going to have Ultron versus Marvel Zombies. I'm just going to stop there. There are many, many more that are going on.
Yeah.
And people can say, it's a celebration, yay! Like, people are really interested in this. Could you say that both of these are basically copying each other right now?
Yeah, they're very similar. In fact, I kind of felt like there was some sort of conspiracy going on, because when I first heard of like Secret Wars, I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. And I wasn't really paying attention to like Convergence, so I don't know which one was announced first. But then when Convergence started happening, I'm like, wait, this is very, okay, interesting. And then, yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, for some of the characters coming out of Convergence, we already know what they're going to look like, and what they're going to act like, because of what solicitations have come out, which is another thing that kind of ruins the events when you know what's kind of going to happen in the books. But that's not. I mean, Secret Wars on its own, I'm looking forward to, because it's going to be basically it's a reboot for the Marvel Universe, which is, some would say, a little bit overdue because of just how much continuity they have. Yeah,
for me, it's very welcome.
I mean, this is going to be like probably their first ever big, like, massive continuity sweep, bar the first Secret Wars, which was getting rid of the Silver Age and the Golden Age stuff. But then we look at DC, who've had 3 in the past 30 years. Are these events the best way to kind of soften people saying, "Don't worry, this is a reboot. It's just an event to soften the blow"?
Yeah, I mean, I see where they're getting at. They want to bring more people on to comic books who might be a little bit confused at where to start with over 75 years of continuity in some cases. And so reboots and stuff, they're great in that aspect, but you don't really need that many of them. And I feel like the problem is that, I feel like the problem is they want to create these really complex, intricate, confusing stories. That way people will be like, oh, if you were paid attention to this, you remember, now you get it. You get this inside joke that's happening here. And, in a sense, that's fine, because you kind of want to reward, I guess, the people who have been reading for a really long time. But when you have reboots and stuff, trying to bring on new people, it has to be done in a way that's it's not gonna end up being even more confusing. Like with the New 52, I really enjoyed it. It was kind of we're starting from scratch. Everything is, we'll keep some continuity, but for the most part, let's build it up again. And I was like, I really appreciate that. Yeah. And then, Marvel tries all the time to, do soft reboots where they're not really reboots, but they're just we're going to start everything, we're going to number everything back to 1, although you still need to know what happened these past, 60 years in the comic books, but we'll try to explain everything. So I like the idea of rebooting to keep everything simple, but you just keep everything simple after the reboot, and you don't have to reboot everything again.
Exactly.
Yeah, just continue keeping everything pretty easy to understand, and make it easy for the fans to just jump in anytime they want and be like, oh, I understand what's going on here. So.
Oh, kind of the final kind of point I want to say.
Yeah.
Should we care about these events anymore, seeing as they're so often?
No. No, I feel like, for me, the biggest issue is that, they don't feel like events. They just feel like the natural state of comics. And I want them to make it an event again, to maybe take a year or 2 off where they just let the comics be comics. And then after that, have this big event, build into it where it's you've earned it now. You can do an event. Let us have our characters and their stories all by themselves for a good amount of time, and then introduce a new event.
I mean, let it be not a get-together just for a pointless reason, saying, oh no, someone such has gone evil.
Yes, oh no, it's summertime again. We need another event.
Oh no. I think, like you say, it has to be, let them go away for a year. Let the characters be on their own. Yes, they may say, oh, look, Superman's there. Let's wave to Superman, but we're going to our own boat now. Mm-hmm. It could be it should be like that nowadays. I mean, because, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it was better before now. And it was a simpler time because it was simpler to follow the stories, and you didn't have to worry about everyone going, oh yeah, did I need to read this book to read that book, or did I need to read this book to read this book?
Yeah, that's so annoying. But I mean, think about it like the movies, right? There's when Avengers came out, there was a huge buildup of years before the Avengers movie came out, and then that made it so cool. And then in between Avengers and then Age of Ultron, we had a few more years to let it build up, and we start learning these little things about what's going to be happening in it, and we start seeing these movies and like how they're all going to connect together, and then it's just that time. It's the anticipation that makes the event so interesting and so cool. And I feel like comics need to get back to that, where there's not just an event every 3 months. That there has to be some time for us to catch our breath.
Yeah.
And go back into the comics, enjoy the heroes that we want to read. And then later, when it's appropriate, when you have a good story to tell, bring on the events.
Definitely. Well, everyone, I think that's kind of said it all on our topic today. I want to say thanks, Scott, for being a brilliant guest on this show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's been a really fun subject, and I will always have you back if you're always interested.
Definitely.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I will just say it'll be brand new content coming up soon. I've got some brand new character histories coming up, hopefully some within the next week or so we'll just keep you tuned for that. But until then, thanks for listening, guys, and ta-ta, my friends. And end of the... It's been a really fun subject, and I will always have you back if you're always interested.
Definitely.
Well, thank you guys for tuning in. I will just say it'll be brand new content coming up soon. I've got some brand new character histories coming up, hopefully some within the next week or so we'll just keep you tuned for that. But until then, thanks for listening, guys, and ta-ta, my friends.